Hey Phil, how are you? I see you joined.
I'm good. It's Friday afternoon. I'm drinking tea. I should be drinking something a little bit more hardcore, and I probably will move on to something more hardcore as the.
We're outside. Soju, do it, Phil.
Yeah, sure.
Get
How is everybody?
Very good. Thank you. Good.
Good. Yeah, just tell me if you need anything from me. I think I'm ready to go.
So we'll try and, because we've advertised to the students that we'll be starting at 4, we'll probably wait another maybe 5 more minutes for a couple more students to join, and then I think we're ready to go.
Absolutely. You just tell me when you need me to do anything. Otherwise, I will turn my camera off so you don't have to look at me. But I'm here.
Lurking in the shadows.
It's actually quite strange for me because I'm sharing my whole screen across there and I don't actually have the Zoom interface up. So I'm imagining a row of faces along here that I can't actually quite see.
More names.
I just wanted to check if all the judges are familiar with how we're going to be going through each of the panels and doing everything today.
Absolutely not.
No. Sort of. I think it probably would be better if someone could just give us a cue.
Yeah.
When we drop in. Yeah.
So as per the run sheet that we had on there, effectively we'll just be going one by one. We've got the PDF prepared in order. How we're just wanting, I guess, each of the judges, if it's an entry that you've chosen, just to spend about 1 minute and just like briefly introduce the project and like what you liked about the project and why you chose it. And then from there, pretty much would open it to the rest of the panel just to discuss for 3 or 4 minutes with general thoughts on that project.
So you guys have the PDF. We don't have to share any PDFs or
No,
anything like that.
So
that is a smart way of doing things. Do not let me share anything. Because otherwise there'll just be flames and crashes and stuff. So yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
It'll operate off, yeah. And are you guys familiar with annotations on Zoom?
I am not, but I shall get my pen.
Yeah, okay, so I believe.
You want to share?
So somebody's gone and drawn a smiley face along here. I turn tags on then I can. Yeah. Yeah, so you are able to turn on annotations, click and follow along. I guess as well if you'd like to draw attention to anything, such as.
Not letting me do it.
I'll use a proper mouse.
It won't let me annotate.
That's the recent one, though.
It's probably for the best, to be honest.
Okay, we can operate vocally through the rest of it. Yeah.
So just so that everyone is clear, we should have 12 panels that we'll be going through today. So like Michael mentioned earlier, we'll be going in rotation, and whoever's picked that panel as their shortlist will be given a minute to sort of present in place why you have chosen that project. Then it would be open to the rest of the judges to comment on. You're given about 3 to 4 minutes, so we're taking 5 minutes in total per panel. And that should, once that is over, then you're given 10 minutes to comment on sort of the overall presentation, what your initial thoughts were, and just your impressions of the competition as a whole. And then Michael will be placing the judges in a breakout room for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how long you need, really, to deliberate the runner-up and the winner. Is that, does that sound okay?
That's good. Yeah. What happened to those entries that wasn't selected?
So because we don't really have the luxury of time to go to crit every single project, yeah, we'll just be looking at whatever has been shortlisted, but all the projects are available on our website to be viewed by the public at any time.
Yeah, we do have like the additional prizes of our Execs Choice prizes and also the People's Choice prizes, which we are considering the entire pool for as well, which we will make an announcement today as well at the end of this presentation for. But yeah, in a way, we're aiming for this short list of these projects that our wonderful judging panel here has chosen. Is that like we wanted to create like a condensed form, I guess, that will be assessed for the first and second prize. So.
If this were a regular competition and we could all meet in person, then it would have been great to see all your criticisms on the projects that have been submitted. But unfortunately, yeah, that's not possible.
Yeah, because there were quite a few good entries as well. It's just that it does not break through to the top. So it feels a bit unfortunate, but thinks that they did a great job.
Definitely after the 12 shortlisted entries have been commented on, you're definitely free to bring up any special mentions if you'd like.
Okay, it is now 4:05 and I reckon we can get started on this. So thank you everyone for coming today and coming to see the finale of our now many week-long process that people have gone to design and produce these wonderful entries for our quarantine competition. So today with us today, we have invited our guest panel of 4 wonderful judges, and some of you may have noticed by now as well that we are actually missing Michael Tawa, our USID judge. And Michael Tawa has informed us a day ago, really now, that he's actually broken his leg. So he's unable to join us today due to being physically constrained in a hospital. So instead, we've got a new panel of 4 judges who, if you'd like to introduce yourself quickly, we can get familiar with who will be roasting these beautiful panels today.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, so I'm Clinton Cole. I'm the director at CplusC.
I'm Hayden. I'm replacing Michael Tyler today. I work at CplusC and teach at UNSW as well. And I'm Ryan. I'm working at CplusC as well. I'm the project architect. Yeah. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Phil. I don't work at. I'm in a different window, but very nice to meet you all. I'm the director of the architecture program at UNSW. A real pleasure to be here.
So today we have got a wee outline here of how this process has worked. So effectively, from the 46 entries that we received, we've divided them between all of the judges, and they've gone ahead and in their own time before this, they've gone and chosen their 2 favorite projects from the first pool, and then from the Better Late Than Never pool, that came afterwards with the latest submission date, they've gone and chosen their 1 favorite project from there. So we have effectively in front of us here today 12 projects which have been shortlisted. And we're going to have a presentation and a debate almost among these 12 projects to determine who our first place, second place, and Better Late Than Never awards are. So, do we have any comments from the exec team, or shall we get started?
Maybe before we get started, we'll just have a little short wave from all the execs from the 3 universities that's brought this competition together. So I'm Celine. I'm the co-president of the UNSW Architecture Society.
I'm Michael, president of SUDA, Sydney University Designers Association.
My name's Jared, and I'm the co-president of UNSW Architecture Society.
Sorry, you can go, Charles.
Yeah, sorry, Anna. I'm Charles. I'm president of BESA, the Built Environment Student Association at UNSW.
I'm Rania. I'm the secretary of the SUDA committee at UCID.
I wonder if Ellen is here. Yeah, I don't.
Well, solid effort, guys. We
Missing yourself, guys. It's nice to
We
see
are missing one. We are missing one representative from UTS, but he represents the the University of Technology Sydney's Architecture and Built Environment Society. So I think that's all. I think we can go ahead.
If we okay, so first project here we have is Crystal Radish by Team Hatch. So I believe Hayden, this was a project that you had chosen.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying this was probably the funkiest concept out of the panels that I got to look at. It's very fantastical. It looks like a childhood book, something that you'd write a story about and read to your kids. Seems like to detach from reality a little bit. Seems to romanticize quarantine, which is something we don't normally see. It probably started to like integrate the items in the most capacity. So there was the phone booth, there was the entry, there was the line bike, which converted to like a paddle bike for exercise in the water as it floats. And there's the broccoli, which is for like food production. So they've actually started to use them as part of the architectural response and the living. I'd say that there was an issue with the way that the pet kind of just like floats in the proposal. There's no like real interaction or mention of the pet. Some of the better proposals that we saw as well actually had they integrated the pet into the whole narrative. So that's something that I wasn't too keen on. But the biggest concern I had was that you defecate outside right where you're going to paddle bike, and the water then comes up into the broccoli. So I don't know how I'd feel about swimming and paddle biking and exercising with some muddy water. But yeah, apart from that, I think it was a really nice proposal, and yeah, something we were really excited with.
Great.
Your broccoli would actually grow a lot better.
It wouldn't be eaten, that's why.
Might be high in metal compounds.
Your broccoli would grow quickly, but you wouldn't smell so good. So, you know, it's swings around about.
And the hot tub, I'm hoping the hot tub doesn't use the same water as well, because that really, yeah, that would seal the deal for me. There were two questions that I had with this. I'm not sure if the students will be able to respond to it. Is number one, I couldn't see anywhere why a radish. There's obviously a really beautiful form. But doesn't really explain why the radish was involved, and their site was Prospect Reservoir in out west, and where I grew up is very close to. I have no idea why they chose that. It's like a back, you know, like wetlands. It's not really that special, so it'd be good at some stage to hear about it. But anyway, that's all the feedback for this one.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other comments from other judges, or Philip?
I mean, look, it's an interesting point, this idea of romanticizing the kind of isolation as well, which I think a lot of the best projects have tried to be optimistic and have tried to show the possible benefits, whether it's defecating directly outside your doorstep or not. But I think this is really it's very poetically drawn and poetically put together, so it looks lovely to me.
Yeah, and I like the fact that because in the brief you mentioned that you have to choose 3 items to be part of the architectural fabric. This one, at least I can see 2 actually incorporated well as part of the architectural fabric, which is the broccoli down to the roots, you know, and the other one is the soju bottles as the screen. I'm not sure if you guys can see it clearly there. There's a screen just right behind the broccoli. Yeah. It's actually constructed by soju bottles. So I feel like, you know, if you can incorporate into the architectural fabric rather than just an item that you use or drink, that for me is a bonus.
Yeah.
It would be great if there's a third item. I'm not sure what's the third item that actually incorporated.
They've thrown them in
yeah,
there,
they just throw some items in
the
there.
other ones are a little bit added on.
Yeah.
It's got a baby grand Renzo piano up here as well, which was
yeah.
Well, there was a very famous project at Sydney University in, I think, 1978 by Cole James,
which built a house out of recycled bottles and mud. I think perhaps Philip might be the only person on this meeting who might remember in the year 1999, perhaps a more apt name for this project would have been called Cryptosporidium. It was when Sydney's water basin was poisoned on the basis of Prospect Reservoir defecation and dead dogs.
Oh boy.
Well, there's the fact.
Well, evidently this quarantine has a bright future ahead of it. Yeah.
All right, I believe we can move on to the next panel.
So this one, Harold and Me, I believe was chosen by Philip, shortlisted.
It was, yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about why I chose this. This is yours, Michael, yeah?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, you know, you can pay me later. I can assure you this was all done with no conflicts of interest whatsoever. No, the reason this stood out to me was two main reasons, really. The first was kind of the idea of symbiosis, where I know the brief called for the pod to accommodate the pet. Here, the kind of pod is the pet. You know, the two are in a kind of weird symbiotic relationship with each other. They share a toilet. They back to defecation again. They have a kind of the pet is also the kind of moving element of the pod. So the pet drives the dynamic kinetics of the pod in that sense as well, a kind of the walking pod, so to speak. So I thought that had been handled very very playfully, and that leads me on to my second point, which was the idea of joy, that we're all in this together in a way, and it's been pretty stressful, and I think this design gave me joy. I thought it was very playful, imaginative. The way the section cuts through the giraffe's neck, for instance, which I first thought was some kind of steak on a plate, but actually was literally a cut through a giraffe's neck, has been done with quite... I don't know how you research this, Michael, but it even looks like the angles of the different muscles have been considered. So you probably had insomnia or something, I'm not sure, but I thought it had that very... it had those two elements to it, which all good projects do. They question the brief, they challenge it. It's got that symbiosis, and more than anything, it's playful and fun. And I really enjoyed that.
Thanks, Philip. Yeah. No, I was definitely going for the scientific accuracy on the section cut, so I'm glad that was taken well.
And that is probably one of the only project that can grow.
Yeah.
Like really grow.
The stakes are high on that one.
Yeah.
The stakes.
Yeah.
That's the pun. What was the Harold and Me? Is that from the childhood, like comics of nutrition and things like that?
Perhaps. I think in the interest of this, I could probably just claim that it was, a spontaneous thing that came to my mind. But of course, Harold did receive some inspiration. As a matter of fact, he seems quite closely related, actually, to a certain character from Madagascar.
Awesome.
But yeah.
I can confirm that the location of the spinal cord is approximately in the right location.
That's important when you're building a quarantine pod around a giraffe.
Extra marks for scientific accuracy. We are scrutinizing these facts. You're not going to get away with anything here. We're looking at these things up live.
Can you build a house around a giraffe? Yes. Yes. So I think it's quite interesting to, you don't actually know if it's a moving giraffe because there's wheels on it. So I don't know if it actually moves with its feet or if it's cycling. It's like a circus act in a way. That's very well. Oh, I think this is,
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Keep going.
So this one is Cages by Team Hero, and this one was chosen by Quinton.
Look, this one really stood out for me because I think everyone... I had the luxury of not staying at home during the lockdown. I was the only one in my office for, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. And it was odd because I do architecture and construction. So one hand, I've got my architecture team. You know, we're having Zoom meetings every couple of days, and every other day I'm going out to site, and all my construction guys are sharing. It's the four of them are sharing baba ganoush dip in the middle of it. So, but this really did describe the way that I guess particularly my wife felt, and a lot of people I spoke to felt. And it's this idea. What I love about this one is this idea that you know. That we feel like we're in control of nature, particularly in architecture, to the point where we feel like it's important to interpret and abstract nature. But when nature bites, we do find ourselves, or have found ourselves, kind of locked in a cage. And the analogy to Hitchcock's The Birds is fantastic. I love the way that this building relates to, and one of my other choices also relates to the Fitzhugh house, the 1968 house by Matty Sorensen. It's the simplicity of it, the elegance of it. Yeah, it just caught my eye and really summed up, I think, of the way that the people, particularly mums and primary carers, who are mostly mums, were dealing with basically being locked at home with kids during the homeschooling period. It kind of, yeah, I guess encapsulated that part of it. And the fact that she has two little a pair of lovebirds inside the house to keep her connection, or his or her connection with nature, that has turned on them on the outside of the cage. Yeah, I thought it was quite a beautiful entry.
And I like the comment about now humans are inside and the birds are on the outside looking at us. That sort of a bit contrast, yeah. It's worth thinking about, actually.
I don't know if it was a deliberate cue, but it also looks like a futuristic pumpkin, and you got ravens outside. It's starting to like pick away at a corpse in a way. It's like a futuristic Halloween.
Yeah, you could take that step of kind of Inception a step further, because I think the pet that they chose actually was a bird, which they've got on the cage, in the middle of a cage, which also has a human inside it. So, yeah.
That's up for
quite all out on their symbolism there. Yeah. Okay, we move on. So this one is The Last Utopia, which was chosen by Ryan and done by Team Animal Crossing.
Yeah, the reason I chose this one, it's not so much about the architecture, but I think it's more about the story that it's within it. I like the way it set up the paragraph, like 269, day 269 and 270. You know, it has a certain narrative that brings you like going through the story. And I like the fact that they also focus on the number of days, 14 days, which is until the day 283. The most, I find something that's most intriguing me is that this thing is like a mystery. Like, I would like to know why it is that. It is the last shelter in this world. Why is there broccoli at the at the entry, which is the only way to enter this pot? And why does this human chose to go in there? Well, apparently it's the last shelter, so he has to go in. But if he likes to see a blue sky, why he chose to go in there? So and what about a trolley with the shoju bottles that allow it to sink down a little bit? So there are a lot of questions that surround this pot. There's a mystery which I find it very interesting. It's pretty much like a movie, like waiting to unveil the story behind it. And it looks like a movie poster to me. So that's why I chose this one. And I like some of the details, like there are a few, like, it feels like a telescopic, I don't know, thing that popping out through the water, down into the water. It feels like it's allowing to look out. So I actually would like to hear what this person thinks about why he do this. Like, there are a lot of questions, interesting questions.
Well, maybe just thinking out loud. every virus has related to consumption of animals. Every virus we've known in history. Maybe this is a metaphor for eating through the broccoli to get to safety.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, you took the words right out of their mouth.
I think I could definitely agree with this one as well. It's one of the few projects that doesn't attempt to label a lot of things. It keeps it very ambiguous, and I agree. It raises more questions than it answers, but it definitely makes you think.
Yeah, I think the question itself, it's beautiful for some reason. I just like to know more about the questions. Yeah.
Do we have any feedback from you, Phil?
Oh yeah, look, I agree. It raises a lot of questions. I'm looking and going, is it underwater? Is it underground? Where kind of is it? I do like the idea of having to eat through the broccoli to kind of get out of it. And I also think that the graphics are very powerful. Again, you know, this idea of it kind of being like a disaster movie poster in a way, or kind of like a panic room movie poster, I think is quite provocative in that sense. So it's yeah, it's very interesting.
And not sure if you guys realize that this pod is actually underwater all the time until the occupant release the trolley and the soju bottles. It floats up, and then he can move up from the broccoli entry. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether that has the same scientific nous as where the position of the spine in the giraffe, to be honest. But I'll go with it. I'll let this one slide.
Alcohol keeps me afloat, for sure. I think so.
All right, let's move on, Michael.
So, Soju in Quarantine Hub here by Macau Gang Gang and chosen by Hayden.
Straight off the bat, this one had the sickest graphics. A lot of effort went into making this sort of self-contained Cedric Price, hand-drawn Bartlett style with Dragon Ball Z, all these mix-ups together. It's like anti-architecture, but it's got like this Chinese floating temple. There's a really strong narrative between the dragon, which is the pet, and the human. Again, it's all about this self-sufficiency. So the person's defecating, going through fermentation. I do raise questions whether I'd want to eat rice that's been fermented through my own excrement. Again, same with soju. They've clearly got they got their priorities right, because the rice is on the outside, but the soju is locked behind a bank vault. So they understand what the economy is going to be desiring. And this is one of the proposals that actually started to extend towards other people as well. They were suggesting that this surplus of production was actually going to the community or going to other people through this jet-powered shopping trolley. So a lot of these quarantine proposals were all about self-containment, but this one's like, we want to still maintain engagement with people, and especially that they've got this YouTube channel that the Dragon starts to post. I don't know if it's weekly or daily, too hot, too drunk to handle. I don't know if I'd tune in all the time, but I think there'd be there would be a lot of stats about the increasing trend of YouTube in the last 3 to 6 months. So you can really see that they've actually put a lot of effort into how to keep people entertained and sane. And I definitely would like to try that soju.
Yeah, I agree. Something that came off to me first off looking at this was that it had a very strong way of tying everything together. That you can see they put a lot of work into making sure everything, almost like a Where's Wally style kind of graphic that you can follow along and kind of let it unravel.
Yeah, the more you look, the more you find, which I think is so interesting.
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly, yeah. And it's simple. It's just a 2D. It's just a 2D cut section, but it's so powerful with colors, and it's not like a 3D or something too complicated. So I think in terms of the panel's quality, this definitely stands out very much. Well, that was pretty much.
I think it shows the power of just having one drawing and going with it. It shows you don't need for a competition like this. We don't necessarily need a DA. We need you can have some amazing amount of fun with like a section like this, and it is. I've just been looking at the PDF, and zooming in closer and closer and closer and finding more details as you kind of go through. So it's somebody who's really embraced the idea of process. Of these things tying together and talking to each other, and there being a kind of longevity to that as well. So, and I think graphically very, very stylish, very, very effective.
I also wanted to know about the red button, but I think that might be for another time. There's a red button in a room with soju dripping in it. But I don't know if that's some sort of like voyeuristic room where you film yourself doing weird things. But anyway.
I think Philip too, just on a, like, you may or may not agree, but I do like to comment that, sometimes one drawing is enough. And I think, for the students here and listening, when you're asked to produce 6 drawings and a master plan model and a detail model, sometimes it's best to produce 3 drawings and just the detail model, and sometimes it's best to produce 12 drawings and double the amount of models required. And it's all project specific. Like
Case by case.
Award systems, even this award system where it asks for a definitive entry requirement, there should be room to step outside that, in my view. Whether it's an award system or a uni or a public competition, I don't think you should be disqualified just because you don't comply.
If there's ever a time to challenge the convention, it is in this kind of competition. So yeah,
Definitely.
I think we'd be tough judges if we eliminated. No, I'm sorry, there's no plan here. I'm not looking at this. But no, I agree. It's really if we're trying to find things you can take out of this into back to uni and stuff as well. Absolutely. Sometimes I've known students in the past do no drawings and just do models, totally against the grain. And sometimes that can be very powerful. You've got to have, you've got to have some clout to do that, some real confidence. But that, the whole point of architectural education is to challenge these kind of things.
Yeah. No, I think that was great. For this competition, we didn't actually specify specific requirements of drawings that they had to or didn't have to have. So I think this is a nice execution. And I think maybe one of our only, I think, single drawing ones. So.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. We now have Banish by Jelly Jenny. And this one was chosen by Philip.
Yeah, I think this is another one where I was taken by the relationship between the architecture and the pet. In this case, the pet being the jellyfish, which glows at night to provide a degree of comfort. And I thought the story there was quite beautiful in that sense as well. I'm interested in a number of facets of this. Firstly, the site, how the project is sited at sea, which I thought was very smart and very challenging, but also how, in a way, it's generosity in some sense with the much larger amount of space for the jellyfish compared to the kind of quite pokey space of the person, which I thought was quite interesting, and the kind of the dichotomy between the above and below in this sense, which I thought was quite interesting, and the sustainability credentials of the project as it seeks to kind of collect the debris on the water and to use it to keep people alive over time until you can return back to the shore when all this is over. So there's a number of facets to this I thought which were really interesting, and as well I think it's really poetically and stylishly presented.
Mm-hmm. Any comments from the CNC team?
It's more fun. The soju bottles in rainwater collector. That's interesting.
Although, if you'd like me to zoom on anything as you're giving a
We've
comment.
had to get our own one. Yeah, thank you. I think it's more than anything. It's a very engaging form. It's very sensual in a way. It doesn't really suggest that it's a house. From above, from swimming, it kind of just looks like another piece of trash or like another piece of waving plastic in the ocean, but it kind of subverts the concept.
I think, for me, I overlooked this one, and I probably shouldn't, but it's not to me, this wasn't an architectural design competition, and this has very, in any other sort of architecture competition, I would consider these aspects that have been addressed with a great deal of weight, but I've chosen to focus, I guess, on those that have looked outside, I guess, the serious aspects and the more abstract, and to an extent, the more humorous. So, not to say that this is not an entry that shouldn't be shortlisted, but yeah, I've got to admit I overlooked this because it was a little bit on the serious side for the scope of what we're looking at.
Yeah, to me, I think looking at this project, one big thing that stood out to me is that I quite liked its kind of integration of the structure itself being almost like a living system, being used towards its to catch its own food, and to really be kind of built into the environment around it. That I thought it was quite nice the way that it kind of drew on both kind of stylistically, almost like a jellyfish, the way it could be pulsating in the water, and yeah, I quite like that relationship from, and I felt like the graphic presentation of this was quite strong overall as well.
It's kind of believable as well. Like it feels like in a few years' time, maybe Elon Musk probably can build this. So I think it's probably the person actually gone through thinking about the practical side of things. That's why hence this kind of design. So I think there's a merit to it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and just looking through into the distance as well, I can see they've included a bit of a Sydney skyline in there.
Oh, yes.
And themselves actually about another 5 or so of these pods in the background. So I guess they're envisioning a world in which your normal lifestyle is now living in one of these pods in the sea, in the harbour. Yeah.
All right, we might need to move on to the next one.
Okay, so we now have The Forager by the Sleepless Trio, and this was chosen by Clinton.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Just loved it. Jumped out because it was, the line work and the fact that it's hand drawn, it differentiated itself from many of the other entries. It's very non-architecture. It's very non-design. Like the proponent is described as a doctor. The doctor is in a virtual world. It's an underworld, almost suggesting something like J.R. Tolkien might have conjured up. What I love about it, particularly being someone who, the highlight of my childhood was when my dad would go to the tip, and he allowed me to scavenge things from the tip and take them home. And I still do that these days when I walk past the skip outside a construction site. And this is very much about building his quarantine pod, or his or her quarantine pod, from the parts that they're recovering. So it hasn't just existed. It's been created from the parts that have been recycled and discovered from this underworld. But they're collecting these parts not just to build their pod. They're collecting it as the doctor to come back and help everyone else who has been affected by the virus. So I found it powerful graphically. I find it quite powerful, the fact that it's looking at things not from on a theoretical architect basis. It's looking at it on a more broad, less siloed basis. So yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites.
And I like the fact that it actually looks really closely into scavenging items and reuse it, repurpose it, rather than things that people mostly overlook. I think it's similar to architecture. Like when you demolish a house, you might find things that you want to reuse, like repurpose it. I think this is one of the scheme that actually look into that closely. So I think that's why we like it.
I feel like you don't need words with this one even. Like if I didn't read the words, you can tell the story, which I think is
exactly.
interesting.
It actually reminds me of the house moving castle as well for some reason. If you guys knows it,
Yeah, absolutely. It is like what is architecture? Is it discovering? I know this is not specifically about this particular competition, but is it is it about finding new products and new things that some new factory and new company is making, and being the first person to use this new thing to make a new object, or can we graduate, become registered architects, and go to a tip and build a beautiful piece of architecture out of stuff that it's not new, stuff that's old, stuff that's sitting there and is going to waste. I find it quite powerful in that sense.
And it's ironic because it's almost a grotesque creature, but at the same time, as it's moving, it's metabolizing the world. So it's actually, in a way, cleaning it up. So it's actually taking on all the burdens and the strains and actually making the world a more beautiful place.
Yeah, I can also give, I guess, praise to the fact that they've chosen to go into an architectural competition and choose to do something like grotesque as such as well. And like they've managed to present something which is inherently quite ugly, but presented in quite like a beautiful way. I think just with their execution of their hand drawing too.
I think the pet's a rat or a mole.
Mole, yes, a mole.
It's a kind of steampunk mole.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. No, look, I think this is fantastical graphics, really. Very, very. But what good graphics are is good graphics talk to where the project's coming from. They're not just strange for the sake of being strange. This really, for me, the way it's drawn captures something about it that wouldn't be apparent if it was not drawn in this way, which really shows a kind of fantastic use of graphics, I think.
Before we move on, I would note that it does look eerily similar to a paraphernalia for smoking. One of the sectional view looks very.
This is being recorded.
Yeah, I know. It does look very strange.
It reminds me kind of the things in the Matrix, the things that have all the arms underground, a little bit, and it's got that kind of the kind of early noughties kind of sci-fi kind of quality about it, which I think is really, really compelling.
Yeah, and whoever this individual or group of is, to sit there with a bar or a felt tip, and it's almost like it's been therapeutic, because it's not just a simple idea thrown out in simple ways and then graphically organized. Like there's a lot of work and a lot of focus on the idea in the graphic. There's a lot of work behind this. I think it's a standalone for me.
All right, I think we might have to move on to the next project.
So this one is Project Airship by Thomas and Angela, and this one was chosen by Ryan.
All right. First of all, graphically, it really stands out as well. It's amazing, and I like the drawings, the two drawings that I put into it. It's clear and it shows a lot of like thoughts behind how he arranged the spaces. And the other thing is, this is probably one of the few projects that actually taking care of the pets. Like there's actually a playground for the pet, for the zoo. There's a slide, there's a pool. It feels like it's happy to live in there. So it's not just you are happy, but your pet is happy as well. So that's a plus to me. And the other thing is the 3 items that he chose to be integrated in this one. It's very smart, especially my fire mixtape. As part of the cooking, the ingredients, and the line bike as the the fuel engine, and the pram and the trolley pram. By using the trolley as part of the pram for the seal, I think that's very, very, very creative. My only problem with this one is it feels big to me, but other than that, I think it's very imaginative. I don't know. I like the idea of floating on the sky, and it feels like freedom, and it's only you there away from all the problems on the ground. So yeah, and then the other thing is they talk about the crop gardens, the grapevines. So it looks like you can self-sustain in this floating airship. So yeah, I think it's if you look at the requirements, the brief requirements, it actually ticks a lot of boxes. So for me, that's that means that they actually look into the brief very closely. So I think that's the merit.
Yeah, the representational quality is just phenomenal with this in terms of the renders, the drawings. They've got a really strong stylistic approach. I was also really interested because the project brief asked to be imagined within a site, and especially being a portable pod, a lot of the proposals suggested a detachment from site. But this, although this is able to be moved and it does move and it transports, it still seems like it's embedded within that site, and it can also be in the middle of nowhere, but it feels in place in this grungy, futuristic cyberpunk that's worn down, out of power. It does feel like it's part of this environment, this language. So it's a really interesting, like, futuristic Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah, look, it's certainly very graphically powerful, isn't it? And I think, again, it kind of brings up kind of connotations of kind of steampunk, of the kind of Fifth Element and things like that, that capture this kind of tension between the kind of dystopia and utopian ideas as well. So they're capturing these kind of visions of cities on the edge in a way, and you know, obviously kind of Mongkok there in the background, kind of more than many places just tend to embody that. But I think, you know, if you want isolation, where do you start to project yourself? And we've seen a few elements in the sea now, and it's good to see some in the sky as well. You know, you're not gonna be bumping into people going for flat whites if you're on an airship. So it's a very effective way of isolation.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Jump on to our next one, which is a bit of a similar pairing concept. So this one here is On the Edge by Coco. So this was chosen by Hayden. If you'd like to introduce this one.
Yeah, so this was part of the Section B submissions, and from the ones that I chose from, this was one that actually met the requirements most effectively. Some of the other ones that we were looking at didn't really make any real attempt to tick any of the boxes, and they may have been interesting concepts, but they weren't really any attitude towards a quarantine pod. So this was the one that was the most interesting. There was still a lack of integration with the pet. There's no pet noticeable at all in any of the concepts, unless talking about the bait for fishing. So there wasn't really this idea of being able to build this structure for you and someone for interaction. It does move and it floats. We have seen a few other concepts like this. And I love the idea that it's got these legs, so it both floats and it can walk on water. So it's this amphibious creature. It's not bound to anything. And as everyone knows, the sea is probably one of the safest areas in a zombie apocalypse kind of thing. So because zombies don't swim very well.
You haven't seen The Walking Dead?
No, I have not. It does, to its merit, it does start to do food production well. It's starting to think about how the broccoli works, but it doesn't really embed any of those items into the architectural fabric or the fabric at all. So there seems to be quite a lot of work involved. I don't know if you can zoom in, but there's a calculus or an algebraic equation that's determines the amount of area or floor space. So I think they could have spent a little bit less time calculating the floor area, a little bit more time thinking about how they can make it an occupiable space. But yeah, this is one that we chose for Section B for this one.
Yeah, also just would like to clarify that so Airship Air was the last one from Section A that was chosen in the main draw from there, although we do have a couple more from Michael Tao we will skip over soon. Yeah, so from Section B we had 12 projects in total to choose from, and each judge was given allocated three projects from the Better Late Than Never category, and they were asked to bring one forward for today. So yeah, this one was brought forward by Hayden and chosen here. So yeah, did we have any other judge comments on this one?
I think this is it has a little bit of similarities with the previous one. That is, it has a similar concept of like the walkable kind of creature, either from the water or on the land. actually would like to see more of the incorporation of the items as part of the build form, rather than just having something just sitting there. So this is something that I would recommend the entries to actually focus more on, how to integrate them as part of the structure, not just sitting there.
Okay, we jump on next. So this one is so not W News. The name is Quorum Physics by Team W News. This one was chosen by Philip.
Yeah, what I liked about this one is, firstly, I didn't like the pod. I mean, I thought the pod itself, I was kind of like, looks like a kind of hotel room kind of thing. But then, why I chose this is the story behind it. So it posits a future where 10 million of these kind of Airbnb style pods have been made for quarantine, and the question is, what do we do with them afterwards? So all abandoned, and it looks to a sustainable future where we start to reuse them in urban fashions. We start to club them together, and it puts together what I think is quite a lovely forest of giant broccoli, combined with these kind of prefabricated elements and a mixture of kind of bank vaults and what look like kind of tubes of slides and stuff to connect all these things together. So while as a pod, I was not too blown away by the actual story behind it. And the story is framed as well, I think, quite interestingly as a kind of front page of a newspaper. So it's framed as a kind of news story. And the news story is we've built 10 million of these things. What do we do with them? Well, here's a potential solution. So I like the kind of sustainability angle to it. I like the collective angle to it as well.
Yeah, I think the only reason I passed over this one is the same reason I've been deleting news probably the past month. So I'm just sick of reading the news, but I couldn't agree more. The conglomerate where the pods have been combined, it's quite a beautiful solution. It's very architectural. It's in the sense that there's so, and I guess another thing for me that was a little bit of a negative is, I'm much older than most of the people sitting here, but I've seen my fair share of architects who attempt to make kind of prefabricated pods, prefabricated housing, and it strikes me as a kind of another attempt to kind of reinvent the wheel in that regard. Although I couldn't agree more, Philip. The ultimate outcome where it's all combined, it is quite a beautiful resolution.
And yeah, the integration of these three and the reinterpretation of the three elements, the broccoli, the vault door, and the phone booth, that was probably one of their biggest strengths in the detail level, is being able to look at these and how we can actually repurpose them on top of repurposing these 10 million quarantine pods. Because one time or another, those Telstra phone booths are going to go. They're not going to be there for much longer. So that's part of it as well. Is like, how can this all be reused?
Yeah, well, they don't comply with CEP 65.
I've heard of micro apartments, but I ain't living in a Telstra booth. I can tell you that for no amount of money.
Turn them sideways.
Philip, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was first in Sydney, and I was looking after myself and working, I would look at the gaps in between terrace houses, the ones that were about 1 metre to 1.5 metres wide, and I imagined myself living in there. I saw that as my in.
I do that now. I see that. I go, I reckon we could get a site in there. My wife gives me a look that says, "Not on your life, mate." Yeah. It's still. I mean, it's funny you say that. It's a dream for me, is to find this discarded piece of site that no one goes, "You can't possibly live there," and I go, "Right." We'll put whack a few Telstra boxes in there and a staircase, giant broccoli. Jobs are good.
Well, it's funny, those sites pop up. They do pop up, and it's always an architect who buys them. It's always an architect who finds a solution on those particular sites.
Absolutely.
There's one out in I called up north.
So we have a final project here from pool number 2. This one was Tissue Pod by Team RSO, and this was chosen by Clinton.
Yeah, this one, Look, firstly, to the organisers, the fact that you allowed or created this kind of Group B, I think it's fantastic. It's nothing more annoying than when you work as hard as possible to meet a deadline, and then you submit on time, and then it's extended by 2 weeks, and everyone else gets to submit, without any ramifications. So I love the fact that you've created this kind of B category. So hats off, thank you. This one is very close to my heart. Toilet paper. Close to my heart, which is quite close to my bum. But I finished my own house 1 year ago, and my wife insisted on a bidet toilet. Now, I was very much against the bidet toilet, but I must admit, come March this year, I was very thankful we had a bidet toilet. And I guess what went on, what we saw in the media and what was happening amongst average Australians, and it was probably one of the most disappointing things I've seen in our country in a very, very long time. Probably more disappointing than people crying when Lady Di passed away. But that's another topic. But the fact that they've used toilet paper as a banner, it's almost like they're promoting the fact that they've got the toilet paper, and they're telling everyone else they've got it. What I like most about it is, again, it's very much like the Futuro House, that 1968 Suriname project that there's many of around the world. What I like most about it, it's really positive about the landscape outside. So most of the others were quite negative about the landscape outside, and they're using their quarantine pod, to go as an opportunity to go explore, perhaps places they haven't seen before. It's mobile. The legs are sanitized, so you can, it's suggesting you can meet other people in their own pods, and you can give them high fives, because the legs and the arms self-sanitize as you give them high fives. But it's really the toilet paper focus that made it, to me, one of the standouts in the B group. It wasn't the one thing lacking is it does have the broccoli. Doesn't really explain much about it. It's got the bank bolt door as the lid, but one of the specific requirements is 50 soju bottles, and they're very specific about it. There's quite a few lying around on the floor, empty, I can see. But yeah, it might be lacking in that third element, which was the key requirement of the submission.
I would like to add as well, I love the metaphor that the toilet paper was something that separated us 3 months ago, and they've now used the toilet paper as a billboard for communication. It's actually become the way that people engage with each other. So I don't know if that's an act of reconciliation or just a fluke, but it becomes quite a statement piece of it.
A new form of currency, perhaps.
I agree. It's got a very positive relationship with the landscape. In particular, that the kind of visualization at the bottom there is very optimistic. It's very very beautiful. I particularly like the legs as well. It's kind of got that kind of future systems circa late 1990s kind of quality about it, which is always very evocative with when I was starting out as an architect. So yeah, it's very, very powerful.
I like the fact that the look of the buildings always look like he's in shock. You know what? I find it very funny. I think at this time of, in this kind of very glim kind of world, you need something to laugh on. So I think that's.
I think that what they were trying to go for is they're trying to make the pod in the shape of a toilet roll, but they've kind of drifted in most of the diagrams. But, maybe being so literal. I mean, is it a duck or is it a decorated shed? This is definitely a decorated shed.
Yeah. Okay, great. We can jump on to the next one. So this one is Atomic Express by
Ryan?
By Wagner Corp, and this was chosen by Ryan.
Yeah.
Actually, oh, sorry, I think there's been a mistake here. This might be I think this was a previous version. I'm not sure if it was. Yeah, right. That's what the one that you would have seen.
Yeah, that to me it's an amazing poster. Again, this is one of the few that has a very simple 2D graphic, easy to navigate, with just minimal drawings, minimal images, and it just communicates the whole story. And I like the fact that we have so many entries about movable, parts, and it's kind of unorganized in a way, but this is one of the few, this is probably the only one that is in a very organized method, from point A to point B or point Z. So I think in that part it stood out to me. And the other thing is, well, I think it's just a very simple transportation, design. So other than that, I think something that they could have strengthened the idea is to again incorporate, the items that is part of the brief, and to make it self-sustained rather than something that relies on just the supplies, which has been noted in the description, which is just supplies from the fridge. So I actually hope that they have something that allows this thing to self-sustain a little bit better. So that's my only comment for that one. Yeah, but I like the graphic. The graphic is just amazing. Yeah, very simple.
Any comments from the other judges on this one?
I want to start singing the monorail song from The Simpsons. It's very Sydney in that sense.
Does that start with words? Does that start with the words "good riddance"?
Yeah, pretty much. It's amazing. Again, graphical kind of panache here to put this together. Absolutely.
Reminds me of Snowpiercer being in a quarantine or post-apocalyptic
absolutely.
world, but with a lot less class warfare.
Okay, so going on, we actually have a bit of a symbolic also addition from Michael Tower. And as you know, Michael Tower wasn't able to make it with us today, but he did nominate 3 projects that, while he couldn't present, that we would also like to be have as part of our pool to show. So we've got 3 projects here. The names now. This was the Lunar Transpersonalization sort of pod, Spectre as well here, and also this last one here, which was, I've lost the name here, Self-Help capsule along here. So I guess I could just briefly talk through these things here, but I guess our judges didn't get an opportunity to add these in. So transpersonalization disorder, you can see we've got a bit of a ghost of Michael Tower in the background, symbolically looking over here. This one was quite unique in the fact that it was presenting almost like, this was the only one that went extraterrestrial, so that was quite a brave gesture in that way. And you can kind of see that the way that they've assembled this is quite like a complicated system, and really saying that once hope is lost on Earth, that they really wanted to, I guess, explore the possibility of people leaving this Earth and going and exploring further along here. And I thought it was like quite a, almost like provocative graphic style, that it's really, they're trying to go for quite a level of emotion with this one. In, I guess, these, this style of drawing that they've got going on the left here. And yeah, these 3 here, we can just, they can be considered as well. In a couple of minutes time, when we talk about our general projects, we can discuss these with the judges too. And this one here, Spectre, also chosen by Michael Tower, is, I guess, quite unique in the fact that it presented very well in the landscape how, I guess, the concept they wanted to take just a pod that could be almost entirely reflective from the outside, and to create this very isolated world on the inside that could almost be like impervious to the elements, not be seen by any predator or anything that could, make a person feel like they're not at home. And I feel like they've done quite a cool thing to situate it within the site, in that this doesn't actually have any form of itself, but it's completely covered in mirrors. So in a way, Spectre, this project, what it, I guess, came off to me at first was very much that this became reflective of all the surroundings. And you can see that they've done how I've designed the inside, I guess, that had met all the requirements of the brief. Although it's quite an architectural design on the inside, you can see that they really tried to go for that kind of dichotomy between very simple and reflecting the outside and actually building through the inside. And then the last one here, nominated by Tower, was a self-help capsule. And this one was done.
Can I just make a comment on the last one?
Oh, sure.
Very quickly. This to me is, I mean, it draws you in, but it's similar to architecture that is buried underground. You know, architecture that is almost hiding it from itself. Very similar to architecture that is underground. Green Square Library is a great case in point. The Louvre, the Cook and Phillip Park Pool. You know, architecture has got to this point in the last decade or two where it's become acceptable to reflect or hide, reflect its environment or hide from its environment. I don't find it acceptable in any way, shape, or form. This is not architecture. This is a building with an insecurity issue, and I just want to make that point very, very clear. That this, to me, is not where we need to look as designers and thinkers. If you want to be a Womble, great. If you want to be a J.R. Tolkien character, fantastic. But out in the real world, let's make buildings and let's make a positive impact on the people around us, not just reflect or hide. So I just wanted to make that particular point.
It is interesting the amount of major civic buildings in Sydney that have been buried in the past recent years. I'm not going to comment beyond that, but I can't think of too many other places where such a trend is as profound. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
Too much criticism.
Yeah. I think I can agree with that on this one as well, but on the other side, I can also see that, like, I think that is very true in our society today, but in a way, what you're saying that this almost wants to disappear and not be seen, I almost feel like that could be seen as more suitable in like a post-apocalyptic kind of world that they seem to put themselves in here, whether that would be like the way that a person would survive, perhaps.
I know whose pod I would be rating. Michael.
Yeah. Great. Okay, we'll quickly skim over on our last one here. We're running a little bit short on time. And this last one here, which was from chosen from Pool B. Yeah, this one is quite cool to me as well. In fact, that while this missed many aspects of the brief, but in a way it was quite a unique project in that it was actually attaching to existing buildings. I think they did this. The explanation on this was based on like the urban Hong Kong landscape. And quite interesting is that they were wanting to provide like these very intimate experiences for people on their balconies and to kind of have almost function as an extension of their everyday life to interface and to click onto a structure that was already there. But what I guess did seem very lacking to me from this project was the fact that it didn't actually include a pet, nor did it include the three pieces minimum that we required for here. But at least from its pool, this one was Michael Tower's nomination from there. So yeah, effectively we have now skimmed over all the projects from here. I'll quickly skim back to the first page for anybody who may have joined this competition late. So this is a quick summary of the projects that were chosen from here. So what we'll now do is that we'll open up the board for 10 minutes. So for the judges, just to give a more like holistic discussion about all the projects together, how the judges felt they stacked up against each other, which ones were stronger, which ones were weaker, and I guess all around just general thoughts. So we've got a bit of a panel on the left with a summary of the projects along there. So if you'd like me to jump to any of the projects to talk over, then let me know. So.
Are we being put into a slide panel, into a slide chat, or?
Not yet. No, this will just be like a 10 minutes, so just I guess general discussion on the projects and your initial gut feelings and things. And then after this, you guys can have a private route to come to a decision.
I think, yeah. I mean, to recap, I think some of the most interesting ones were ones that used the interaction of the pet and the human as a driver of why these quarantine pods exist and how they either interact or decide not to interact with the environment, where they've just ignored an environment completely. I feel like it doesn't have that same capacity for engagement with the competition. Yeah, I think there was some really strong ideas of what an apocalyptic world or what a quarantine world would look like, and how these pods don't just isolate the occupants, but how they actually make the world better or somehow interact with either the immediate environment or other occupants in their own quarantine pods as well.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely felt that as well. I think a lot of the ones that had really good pet integration stood out to me, and like pet and thinking about like how the person survives in terms of almost an ecosystem more than just like an architecture, were ones that like really push that boundary into being really effective projects along there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the ones that stood out to me, were the ones that thought about things like process and an ecosystem, and thought about less about the kind of spatial. Well, obviously the spatial's important. We're all bodies within a volume in this sense, but also about how from our beginnings at defecation, we had a number of toilet-based projects, right down to things like, you know, collecting rubbish, processes. I mean, here's a really good example of quite intimate and nuanced processes where the architecture is the process is the architecture. And they're particularly, I think, inspiring. And then you've got the power then of architecture to tell a story, to develop a narrative, to set an uncertain scene. And they were the ones that really stood out for me. The people who've not thought about a point in time in terms of isolation, but have thought about a process in time. But more than anything, I put my huge congratulations down to everybody who's done this for no marks, for no credit, and possibly no toilet paper, possibly at 2 o'clock in the morning, fueled by some horrific energy drink. You know, it's incredible the level of creativity everyone has in this time. And I've always thought, actually, though, the idea, you know, creativity comes across most at these most extreme environments. You know what I mean? There's nothing more difficult than designing in a big empty field with very little brief. So the idea of this isolation, the idea of pandemic, the idea of these very uncertain futures has fostered this really diverse array of different approaches from everybody, which I think is really inspiring.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess in like a more general terms as well, looking at the projects, how did you feel that did you feel that some of the projects overlapped, or did things like similar concepts but more effective or less effective than other ones? Some general thoughts before everything goes private and behind some curtains.
I think the degree of diversity is, like, to me, it's been almost shocking. I've been quite critical of architecture faculties in Sydney for quite some time, but there's clearly something being done right at the moment to have attracted students of this caliber, to have attracted students who are capable of thinking so diversely that it's just mind-blowing. But it's clearly also nourishing their minds and allowing them to think as designers, as creative thinkers, and also as non-architects. And I guess that's why one of my selections was probably the furthest from an architecture-related course. But yeah, look, this has renewed my enthusiasm. So thank you so much. And congratulations to all entrants. It was really hard. And even when everyone was reading out their particular entries, I was like, well, maybe I should have looked at that one closer. But, you know, you see what you see, and that's the burden of being a juror is, you know, you can't spend hours on all of the 50-odd entries. But yeah, to all those who entered, I would just say hats off. I don't think I could recall one that was done in half measures or that it felt like was done without. Maybe one or two.
There's one or two.
The bulk were amazing. Like, you know, like we get, I get hundreds and hundreds of portfolios and CVs every year, and if they could only have some of this juice and energy, yeah, I'd get more excited about opening them and reading them.
Yeah, and again, I feel like there are some other entries out there actually are really good as well, like the panopticon, the social distancing. For me, they are my special mentions. It's just that, you know, we just doesn't have enough slot to have all of them in, but it's great to see how they think about, you know, what supported, especially the social distancing is actually the bottle. So for me, that's really interesting.
I just had a thought. It'd be great to compare the way that these students' minds are working now with what they will or may be like, or predictably so, once they become registered architects. I don't think you get the thinking once you become indoctrinated and registered as an architecture. And that's perhaps one of the biggest problems with architecture as we know it today.
Yeah. And it's great that the requirement is fit into one A3 sheets, because that allows them to think about what to put into such a small size of paper. So those that actually communicate so well with just like one drawing or just like 3 images, for me, they are actually the very stood out one. Because if you move into the real world, if you work in the architectural firms, communication is always most important. How do you communicate to, you know, the council, the clients in just one single drawing? That's, for me, it's a very important skill that you have to carry on into when you graduate from the school.
Narrative.
Yeah, the narrative is very, very important.
Visual narrative. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to just give like an extra shout out to all of the entries really that you can, if anyone would like to follow along, they're all viewable on our website, interunidesign.com up there as well. And like, of course, we didn't have time in one day to go through all 46 entries that we had along here, but just like in general, the standard and the quality of these was just like incredible. Like the diversity that you're seeing between all of these projects, almost many of them coming in at 11:59 p.m. all at once, just with these like simultaneous 50 different avenues of thought, is really incredible to see like how people have gone and interpreted this. And yeah, fully we do plan coming forward with a lot of highly commended awards. So a lot of projects that while they couldn't be on our finalist panel here today, we do recognize were like really, really incredible works. And I know a lot of the students even going through this were like, we've got first year students, third year students. It's been like a wide and diverse mix between them of people like going solo, people getting together, friends, and in a team. And yeah, like I just really encourage everyone, if you haven't already, just to go and really look through all of these wonderful entries on the site as well, on the website that we've got here. So yeah, moving along with our time planning, we'd now like to invite our 4 judges to step into our breakout room and have a discussion on themselves on 3 things: a first prize, a second prize, and also among the last 4 projects in the second pool, which a winner for the Better Late Than Never prize. So Celine, do you have a breakout room there?
I think you have to place us in the breakout room because you're the host, yeah.
All right, let me see.
Oh, so dangerous.
Once we're with Phil, we'll just chat,
yeah.
and then.
Where did I find this?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry guys, I've got it's school holidays, so I've got to go.
But he's given us.
He's given us his
But I've given
selection.
my
Already.
selection.
Okay.
Feel free to disagree with them. That's what I can do. Good to see
Thank
you
you so
guys.
much.
See ya.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So yeah.
And just a note for everybody else waiting, while the judges are in a breakout room, the executives, we will be doing a bit more of a roast on some of the funniest and memeiest entries that we found.
Oh, I want to
So-
stay for that.
That's how we're going to entertain.
We'll get the voting done in a minute. Wait.
Well,
Okay.
you can watch the recording back once we publish it somehow, if you'd like to do it. But that's how we're going to entertain you somehow for the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Of
It
course,
won't be
we're
quick
happy
then.
to-
We'll make sure you
However long
spend
it
some
takes
time
you guys
doing
to
that. It's
come to your decision.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, I will now move you guys to another room. So good luck with your selection process.
We'll need it.
How long do we have?
About 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Great. So you should just have an invitation that's come up on your screen there.
I don't think I got one.
Did you want me to add you as well?
Oh, was I meant to be added in later just to check on them?
Yeah, just maybe in 10 minutes you can get added.
Yeah, we can give them some privacy now. Yeah.
We just got to get the decisions from them before we get them talking about it. So I can.
Yeah, before we get them to come back, we'll get the decision from them.
All right, so let the roast begin.
All right, Michael, you have to cue the music.
Oh yeah, we have some great background music to go.
Okay, so is this in relation to our meme category? So we shortlisted 3 projects that really stood out to us for meme entries. So one was our fellow entry.
What is it, Thanos?
I can find him, Mr. Thanos, as well. You guys want to say something on this one?
I feel like we shout out to this project also because it was submitted way before.
Yeah, this was
all the other projects were submitted. Yeah, and for the most part, most of the projects came in at like Michael said at 11:59, and this was weeks before. So really, props to the team who made this.
Someone has actual time management skills.
But props to
Good job.
Someone has their life together.
Yeah, and we've got another couple that we saw actually came in the better late than never category. So we've got Coffin here by Bricklayers, and they've taken quite an original approach to this. So it seems like it hasn't actually met a lot of the criteria. That doesn't matter because they've chosen to omit this in favor of, in my opinion, quite a solid meme, and they've provided us a short link, which, surprise, surprise, leads to a YouTube video.
This is what clubbing's like in Corona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the music's too loud for you to comment over it.
Look,
You
we
gotta
can get rid of
sit down
that.
a bit.
I can't
I love how we can sort of see the judges doing their thing on Ryan's video, they're so seriously discussing the entries,
And
and
we've got this beat music in the background.
Yeah, and then we've got another project that took a similar approach in the meme category. They did link themselves a video along with this one.
Oh, sorry, Michael. Before you go on, I just want to say to anyone who's watching now, the chat is open to you as well if you'd like to make any comments.
Oh, true,
Let
yes.
us know about anything that you're thinking.
Take this as an opportunity with your judges having
Please go
departed.
ahead.
All right, Michael, you have to play this one too.
Yeah, this one takes
Yeah, so this is another one that had a URL linked to us in the description for this one.
雪花飘飘，北风萧萧，天地一片苍茫。
Yeah, so we've got quite a savage introduction to this one as well, saying, imagine being born disabled, from UNSW. Yeah, and yeah, it's a very musical approach. It's been a combination of Minecraft and SketchUp and decent things, along with some questionable portrayals of our fellow university staff and other creatures. So this one indeed would score highly on our meme category.
Michael, turn off the music.
My apologies. Yeah, my speaker system is too effective. Yeah. Yeah, but if there are any other projects that we found interesting or wanted to call out or discuss during this point?
Yeah, just for everyone listening, those were our short list for the meme category. We've also have a couple that the execs have shortlisted for the best narrative category, but we probably won't be announcing that until the judges have made their decision, because I think the caliber of the projects that we have chosen were shortlisted. So yeah,
we don't want to influence their decision or any other choice as well. So we want to let that grow organically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, would you be able to look at the Shrek project, please?
Oh yes, yes we would, if I can find that.
Yeah. I thought this was mint. I don't know about you guys.
His internet's cutting. Well, your internet cut out.
I thought this was.
But, I mean, you know, the only important thing in life is. Oh, of course it is. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, all I wanted to say is of course, as we all know, Shrek is love and Shrek is life. That's it.
Shrek is life.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you get when you mix Smooth Van Der Rohe with Shrek and his swamp?
You'll spell Shrek wrong. You know what? Well, we've got a comment for. I don't believe that was our mistake. Actually, we only do what we're instructed. So I'm sorry, Mr. Tim Lau. You'll have to blame us.
Oh my gosh, Tim!
Blame us on that. That was what was written in the email. So.
Yeah, we just copy pasted that. How did we not pick that up? How did we not pick that up?
Shrek,
I'm disappointed that we didn't pick that up.
How do you spell Shrek wrong when Shrek is love and Shrek is life? Maybe if you spelled it right, you would have shortlisted the same.
Oh, we have Mr. Tim Lau who's appeared in our Zoom chat here.
They're ready, Michael.
Oh no.
Oh.
We need to. Can you put me in a breakout room with them?
Again? Yes, I can.
Gotta leave the party. Sorry, guys.
1 second. Jerry.
I get found out for again. We are done.
Ooh.
Fill in quarantine.
You can unlock us now.
Okay.
Wait, can I
Hi
put Jared in that breakout room with you as well?
Yes, we'd like to propose and see if it's okay with you that a joint second place. So we couldn't decide between.
They need to mute their mic.
I guess number 2 had 2 spots, so we're wondering if they're able to split the prize money in a way.
Ooh, okay. Before we do any public reveals here, you could
you ask people who are allowed.
Don't say yes and then get in trouble later.
Wait, I don't have permission.
Oh boy.
I'm there. Did I get it in time? Maybe I did.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't hear anything. So.
Okay. Wait. How did that happen? They've got 2 accounts going in there, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, to the public who's watching in anticipation, you've got a bit of a sneak peek into what they're interesting there. Yeah. Yeah, but I guess in that case, we're waiting in suspense. And to all those who've joined, we will also be an announcement today on our People's Choice Award and also on our meme category. So you just bear with me for one moment. I will be consulting this chat.
Anyone else free to roast any other projects?
Yeah, if anyone would like any project brought up or would like to make a comment on it, post it in our Zoom chat and we're happy to oblige. That's any entry, not just the ones shortlisted today.
Michael, keep scrolling. Let me see if I have anything to comment.
Sure. You guys mind giving some feedback on my entry, The Wandering Snail? I'm trying to improve my panel skills. Absolutely.
The wandering snail.
Wandering Snail. Whereabouts is Wandering Snail? Here we go. Yeah, Celine.
One second. Oh, I don't believe was this in the better late than never category?
No, this was in the initial category.
I don't believe because I personally didn't go through all of the projects, but I think from my first impression, the use of colors is very attractive. I like that you've used pastel colors and this sort of like collage where you're showing where the pot is moving from place to place. I mean, that's a very strong use of that collage technique of rendering. Could you please zoom into the text?
Oh, this is a bit of an issue because I got this one open in the website.
Because I can't read it.
Right. I guess this is the description on the right. Sorry, is the stream not particularly clear on there?
No,
I can read out the middle portion for you here. So,
yeah, cool.
A true snail experience. Drag your house using just a bike. You might not get far, but you're getting the workout a true homebody deserves. Also, you can only enter your home by crawling through the trapdoor, just like a snail. The pod is detachable, so you can cycle without the heavy load if desired. Yeah, so this one, I did take a look through this one originally. I thought it was like quite, this is one that I guess checked the brief boxes really well, and you can see it through this little diagram I've done here, put a decent amount of thought into trying to have something that's actually functional as a proper like survival pod. And I thought about things like solar power and neatly packing it into the area that's been given. In terms of graphic style, I'd say if you really wanted some criticism, I think it's probably the cohesiveness of the project as a whole. Where I think that while this is like quite a cool like collage style standalone drawing as well, that perhaps maybe some more cohesion between like the top half and the bottom.
Yeah, I feel like the render on its own is very compelling, but then the rest of the panel doesn't really tie it well together. Like you don't read it the same. You could almost put it as on 2 pages almost. Whereas if you notice some of the other submissions, that one A3 panel is the main source of that communication, and it can't do without any portion of that part of the panel. Whereas because most of for example the bottom half of your panel is line work, it doesn't really draw your eyes to want to read it. Yeah, so
I think like maybe my one, like if I had to give one suggestion for this one, it might be that maybe look at like the way you're wanting to present information, because for example, if I look at this sequence down the bottom here, I can see how things are folding up, but it's a bit difficult for me to relate. Like, is that from this drawing? Is this drawing related to this one? And how does it fit into the bigger picture? So I'd almost look towards, say, like, for example, Soju Quarantine Hub was one that did it all in one drawing. I'd say that this drawing could be one that I think could have been done quite effectively if the main drawing was, say, like an exploded AXO. And you could show, like, because there's like a big post in the way here, if instead of this was like a cut open drawing that kind of showed us how it all operated, I think might have been the best approach.
If you had used that main render as like sort of like what we call like the hero image, where like that's your main source of communication, you put it in the middle, you blow it up, and you add more detail to it, then I think that would have been a lot more convincing.
Yeah. All right, if we skip up a couple more in the chat here. So we've got Bob the Builder telling us, 雪花飘飘，北风萧萧, which I 100% agree with. That's a very, very true and wise statement there. Yeah. And Reconnecting says that they relate to the roast of Spectre on a spiritual level. Like,
which
my
one
God.
is Spectre?
Yeah. Spectre was this one here, which, quite a brutal critique of, definitely.
Yeah, that was pretty roasty. I thought that this project was nice. Like I totally agree with you, Michael, that like maybe in this context where like you're in quarantine and you're post-apocalyptic and you're trying to survive, maybe like hiding is a means of survival. So I thought that was very fair comment.
Okay, we've just been informed by our judges that they've come to a decision, so they'll be rejoining us in a second.
Are we getting a drum roll?
Is there a drum?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, if you'd like to talk us through your selection process and I guess what you've determined and
why
you've come to this.
We almost came to blows. It was a really tough decision.
Yeah.
Came to blows.
It was
virtual blows. Finger wagging.
I think it was unanimous with all the judges.
So before we do that,
sorry.
Oh, I'll just quickly, if it's all right, just to quickly share my screen because we've got a little, just to help everybody out, the graphics. But Michael, am I able to share my screen?
Yeah, you can share this off. We'll let you.
All right, just need 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
The awkward silence between screen shares.
Try to work that.
It's fine. This is all part of building suspense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's building something. I don't know if it's.
Okay. How do I?
It's loading, Jared.
Yeah. Give it a second.
Is it there at all? It should be.
Yep.
Right.
Wow, that's a lot of.
See it in design. Yeah.
A very quick turnaround. I'm very impressed. You guys know how to InDesign like that. If architectural education gets you anywhere, it's a very quick InDesign file.
That's all you need in life. So if you'd like to announce the winner of the first prize.
Yeah, I think it was unanimous between all the judges that we wanted to award the first prize to the Forager. Just to reiterate all of the comments that we had and that we circulated was that it was this amazing, a lot of effort put into this concept. It's obviously a labor of love. You have to be committed to doing something like this. It's not something that you can just put together quickly. They clearly have a really good notion of what a post-apocalyptic world is, how to metabolize all of this waste, and how this is actually going to contribute to a better world.
And it's meaningful. Like this object is, for me, seems meaningful, and you know, in architecture, when you design a building, that's something that, you know, it's perhaps, you know, generally people may have missed it, but I think a meaningful thing that you create, it actually lasts a lot longer.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, well, big congratulations to Forager. It's definitely a stand-up project and very well deserved. So, yeah. Also, to all the prizes, we'll come into contact with you after the competition with details on how to collect your prize, and we do have all your contact details. So, look out for that.
Hi, we just wanted to say thank you. We're us and Ellen. Ellen's also on here too. We just want to say thank you for all the feedback. It was actually really, really helpful for our future design projects and just uni, I guess, in general. But thank you so much for awarding us. That really means a lot.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Projects, and you could really see the passion and your own vision.
Very well done. Very well done. Especially graphically, it's just blown us away. Yeah.
Wow.
Carry that skill, you know, when you go up to work, carry this skill along. It's very, very interesting, very important.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. And now the runner-up choice.
I think the runner-up it's a bit tough. We had to go back and forth. We tried to see if we could split it. The judges were the execs were a bit too cruel to us. They didn't let us split it. But initially, and I think we carried it through. We voted that the Soju Quarantine Hub would win runner-up for this. Fantastic project. I think the main reason that we chose this is because graphically it's very simple. It's just one image, one sectional image, and it communicates everything. So most of the entry has at least 3 images, but this is the one-off that is just using just one sectional image and communicate everything. So, and by the use of colors to highlight different sections, different stories, different areas. Again, this is because I'm always looking at how you communicate in drawings, especially when you came up to work, you have to communicate with the council, with the developer. This type of skill is, to me, it's important skill set. Yeah.
So,
and this is capturing an architecture of systems, not an architecture as we know it with a capital A, but an architecture that helps produce, helps recycle, helps make food, helps engage the community.
it is the process. Yeah, it's a process. It's not just the outcome. So architecture is not just the outcome; it's also the process. So I think this one highlights a lot about the process, which I think is very interesting.
Hi. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah, just amazed. Thank you.
Congratulations. Very beautiful. Yeah, drawings. Yeah.
Ooh,
Well done.
And to note as well, this was the choice that the judges were stuck between for second place.
Sorry, Michael.
Michael, you decided not to split the money with yourself.
All good.
So
I didn't want our money anyway, so all good.
Yeah.
But then the better late than never prize, and the winner was, drumroll everyone.
It's the toilet.
Tissue
hub, or I can't remember the name. Tissue pod. Yeah.
The one that looks like a toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly.
We came to again, it was a bit of a unanimous decision that it was the only one that really stuck out. The only one that made this experience a really positive experience and started to look at the environment and the world in a better way. Wasn't taking it in a very cynical approach like a lot of the other quarantine hubs. This is something that you could actually see yourself in. It's almost like Dream-esque in a futuristic PlayStation game written by a Japanese artist. It's just beautiful.
And it makes us happy to look at it. Like it's like an emoji. Yeah. So it's a fun object. Yeah.
Philip, any final comments on the
Thanks.
on the winners?
Oh, look, they were all. It was a really tough decision. I think there was a standout number one, and we were blown away by it. But after that, it became very, very difficult to make a choice. But I commend everybody in this, because to do this kind of activity for no credit, at a very stressful time, I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you got a bit of imagination and a bit of fun out of it. And as we've said several times, I think carry this on through. Don't let go of this, because there's been some real fantastic ideas kind of put through. But I think the top projects were excellent. Well done.
Yeah. Congratulations to everyone.
Yeah. Well done,
yes,
everyone.
And thank you again to all of our judges for being a part of this too. You're so open to this quite crazy brief. What we'd like to do now, quickly, just before you go, is we're going to just quickly announce the 3 other prizes that we had on offer. So that was the exec choices and the popular vote from Facebook. So in the best meme prize, we decided to choose Egg Mad. I did not personally choose this one. So Michael or Celine, would you like to speak to this quickly?
Oh boy. Okay. I think, Jared was super against choosing this, but I think Michael and I and Rania, we were so emotionally attached to this. Although this graphic does poke fun at the fact that UNSW is not painted in a very good light. But just the depth of the meme, the depth of thought put into this, this project is astounding.
I have to rewatch the video of this Eggman to refresh my mind a little bit what this is about. Yeah.
Much like the second prize, the more you look into this graphic, the more you uncover, and it's just how cleverly that Louis Vuitton pattern is photoshopped onto the Minecraft boat. And yeah, that opera house in the background was just great, and just the fact that UTS is at the back, just like how UTS is at the back of the competition.
Why?
If anything, I think this is a project that it very subtly meddled the requirements. That yes, holistically it was playing Sua Hao Piao Piao as the fire mixtape. It did have a line bike which was very much abandoned in the background, and then it did very much have a subtly integrated Louis Vuitton pattern. But more so, the narrative talking through this one was quite. If one is up to date with their memes, then I believe this one had quite a significant contribution towards the cause made. And
fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great meme.
I think a second in some of our eyes was also the Thanos project. We quite like that one too. And then the best story. So I forgot to put the correct graphic in this PDF. So maybe you can just tell us while I'm finding the graphic, Michael and Celine, which one we chose and why.
For this best story, the best narrative prize, the execs came together, and we really looked through all of the submissions, quite like how the judges did so today. And strangely enough, for our first and second choices for the best narrative was chosen to be the runner-up and winner today by the judges. So I suppose it was a unanimous decision by the execs and the judges. And so for our choice as the best narrative, I think it goes to this project, which is very well deserved. I think at first the execs were not very convinced. I personally was very moved by this project because of and I think after Clinton did his little presentation on why he thought this project was so beautiful, I think everyone else was sort of moved.
Yeah,
just as
the
I
project
was.
really stood out as a project which was almost existential in its nature, which is if you kind of took a second to look past initially a very good graphic, but to think of more the context that they've gone and made this project in, and then I guess the fact of how they're looking inwards on humanity and humanity being trapped instead, and they've really gone above and beyond to I guess layer on these layers of symbolism on top of it, not only having your person trapped and looking out at the birds flying on the outside, but also talking about how this person as well as having their own little relishing in their own little bit of joy with their own pet in their cage within a cage. And I think it's quite almost symbolic of the times that we're in as well. So, showing fundamentally how much our perception on the world can really change, flip on its head from that.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful narrative, I think. Just focusing on what is required of them in the brief.
Yeah, and I think this additionally it did. Yeah, go on.
We do have to move on. I just wanted to quickly mention for that story, we also considered the Forager and what was the other? Soju Hub, I believe.
Yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Because they have both taken out prizes, we didn't want to double up, so this was our third choice. And finally, our popular vote, which we got you guys to initially voting on the website, but we realized that people could hack it, so we changed that to Facebook. And this mother with about 700 votes well in the lead from every other
Yeah,
project.
we had,
but I think
we
this
had
project definitely does have
703
some
votes.
merits. But I think it is also a very beautiful project and deserves a prize as well. I think I love the way that they created a system for it to connect with other pods, especially so that isolation isn't as lonely as it has to be. As a mother and child relationship could be.
Yeah, it was quite interesting in the fact that this project, they actually understood themselves.
Very minimal and just how graceful and elegant this.
Yeah, they built around this 12.5 concept, really saying that, like, this building was only reaching its full potential when connected to all these other ones. So like it's while we did see other projects as well that did this very like connected approach towards wanting their projects to function as a whole, like as a collective with other ones as well. This one was like this was like a really nice and effective way of doing this. You can see that they're really trying to provide I guess like a enclosed environment for like the person and their pet getting around in this one. And you can see by like the kind of graphic style that they've gone with and trying to go for this very barren landscape and saying like almost this is like life away from civilization that you've got on the back. And the fact that almost similar to Forager, but they're saying that this it's almost alive in itself, going around and self-sustaining through exploration and finding and bringing back to itself. And yeah, like if the judges wanted to have any comments on these projects too, feel free.
Yeah, I was actually, when we only have like 2 options for section A, and this is actually, one of the tough one that we have to left out. But yeah, I think this deserves a recognition itself. It feels emotional, the use of word mother and how it's used the word mother and incorporate into the architecture, the story. I think it deserves some recognition. Yeah. So well done to this one too.
Yeah, and also just like to give a shout out to the team behind this one for doing an absolutely phenomenal drive behind sharing and bringing votes attention towards their own posts as well, because like 703 votes is truly a really incredible effort. Post, and I think second place we had Alone Together with 473. Then a very, very steep drop off after that as well. So like a very, very warm congratulations from our exec team, and that's just like honestly a very incredible effort. And it's really good because in a way like there's been so many people who've through like that was a public post and shared I think 140 times nearly on there. That like was the exposure to the greater I guess greater community and a lot of like friends and family as well. We've seen that it's been great to be able to share the I guess this very quirky architecture competition we've had to the general public. So yeah, great job on that one.
Cool. Congratulations, guys.
So yeah, just a final thank you for everyone who's involved, especially our judges, everyone who entered, and thank you to everyone for being a part of this live stream as well.
Yes.
This evening. It's been a lot of fun for us executives putting this together. This is the first time all the societies, architecture societies of each university, and we hope to continue collaborating throughout the rest of the year. So we'll see how COVID restrictions ease back, and hopefully this is a relationship that will continue into the future as well.
Or what's happening with Melbourne, this actually might be a reality in the next few weeks. So,
yeah. We can send some quarantine pods their way, maybe.
Indeed.
Definitely well done, the executive team. You guys did a very good job in organizing this and coordinating in such a short amount of time. Yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah, and just a big final thank you to everyone who entered, and not necessarily everyone who didn't make our shortlist today, but everyone, all 46 of the entries that we had on the website. Like there's been an incredible amount of effort and work that's gone into all this, and like it's all come together in a really, a nice cohesive way that we've had such a awesome range of projects. So once again, thank you to everybody, and we will be in contact with not only our winners, but we also have, we'd like to get some highly commended awards to a greater range of approaches as well, which we felt like really went down the unique path and pursued it to an extent that like absolutely we'd love to give some recognition for. So with that, we'd like to thank you all for coming today. Thank you, judges. Thank you, spectators, and thank you, entrants as well to this.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah.